Hello everybody, my name is David Attenborough. You know me for my work at BBC's Planet Earth, narrating over fascinating documentaries of the natural world. Although today I've been raised into undeath by the Lich King and been tasked to explain to you aspiring morbers how to play Unholy Death Knight. But before we begin our search, I am going to clarify that I won't be covering all the facets of being a Death Knight. If you don't know the basics of playing Death Knight, I recommend closing this video, opening WoW, and creating a Death Knight yourself. You'll master all the basics by the time you're level 80. Beautiful. If you're wondering why exactly you should play an Unholy Death Knight, well, just one moment. What is this mad rambling supposed to mean, even? Never mind, moving on. All the information one may desire can simply be found by reading Wowhead articles or by asking the basement dwellers located in the Blight Club Discord server. Just don't mention a certain streamer. Upon arrival, you may find all the necessary resources from builds to openers by clicking on the pins located in the dedicated Unholy channel. Time for some quality assessment. Let's take a look at your logs. Hand them over, don't be shy. Ah, what a resplendent pass of 20. Truly, you've been mashing your keyboard at random like it's no one else's business. That simply won't do. But how does one avoid being such an undesirable specimen? To start, let's look over the ability rotation for an outstanding Unholy Death Knight. We'll be using the standard Phase 3 Scourge Strike Morb build with Sigil of Virulence. This is the most played version of Unholy and comes with all the utility and performance an average player will need. At first glance, it may seem like a Death Knight has to manage very difficult rotations due to the sheer number of abilities they possess. But in actuality, the rotation is quite easy to grasp. All you have to do is integrate your many abilities into whole actions, as it were. Every action uses all 3 rune types. You fight in Blood Presence, with your first action being setting up your diseases and desolation buff using Icy Touch, Plague Strike and Blood Strike. This is followed by Death and Decay, or DND for short. And as your final action, use a Scourge Strike for Sigil buff and a Blood Rune ability of your choosing. Which one you use is dependent on the circumstances you're in. Alongside this sequence, you want to Blood Tap and Ghoul Frenzy whenever possible, but only after using your leftmost Blood Rune. Doing so allows a Death Rune to take its place immediately and avoids the risk of your runes desynchronizing, ultimately leading to a loss of damage. Although make sure to only do this after a Death and Decay or Scourge Strike action, for the same reasons stated before. In essence, this is the maintenance rotation of an Unholy Death Knight. You repeat this cycle during encounters, dumping excess runic power with Death Coil and keeping your runes in order. Also, make sure to spam Horn of Winter whenever you have an opening in your global cooldowns. It must be said, however, that the highest priorities are keeping your diseases up and death and decays down whenever possible. Your Scourge Strike is ultimately a lower priority compared to those two, so if it doesn't proc during combat, just continue your rotation regardless. Phew! Now with that lengthy rotation out of the way, we can move on to our other 2 most important abilities, Gargoyle and Army of the Dead. And while we're at it, I've grown tired of Weakauras. Let's move locations for a bit. Ah, a scene change, so delightful. Where was I? Oh yes, Gargoyle and Army. Both crucial in our damage. To understand why, one must learn how they interact with our stats. Your humble Gargoyle, henceforth known as Gary, will deal on average 10 to 15% of your total damage to a boss, but this amount is entirely dependent on how well you snapshot those said buffs. To explain snapshotting quickly and concisely, Imagine that whenever you summon Gary or Army, a picture is taken of your stats. And that picture is what Gary uses to calculate your attack power, ignoring if your stats change. Knowing this, there's primarily 3 stats that are important for your Gary and Army: attack power, attack speed, and hit rating. The only other stats that matter are those that can directly affect these 3, like strength and haste rating. Other stats and percentage-based effects like blood presence or tricks provide no benefit to Gary or Army. On the topic of hit rating, there isn't much to it. As long as you have over 263 hit rating from your gear and/or food, you should be fine. An important distinction to make is that although Army snapshots both attack speed and attack power, Gary only snapshots your attack power, meaning that should your attack speed change, like with a bloodlust, then he will dynamically update to its current amount. But the spell itself doesn't buff Gary or Army individually, since, as previously mentioned, they copy your stats. To simplify everything I just said, in a manner that is understandable to a literal ghoul, you want your order to be: 1. Pop attack power cooldowns. 2. Pop Gary. 3. Wait 3 seconds for Gary to start attacking. 4. Pop haste cooldowns. 5. Pop Army of the Dead. Also, make sure to be in Unholy Presence to provide more attack speed for Gary and Army. And that's it. That's literally how you make the best of your Gary and Army. Moving on. Now that you understand the order of buffs, it's time to study this opener, which is also available in the Blight Club Discord. Thank you, Izzo, for sharing. Our opener has a major impact on our performance. All the buffs and snapshots determine the quality of our summons, and thus the quality of our damage. Unlike the opener of a Retribution Paladin, which consists of Judgment, Divine Storm, Bubble, and Hearthstone, our opener actually matters. I sadly lack time to go into greater detail, so instead I'll just put the list of points from the previous visual to assist simplifying the opener. Take a moment to remember these, and please install a snapshot Weakauras. There's plenty of Weakauras that exist to help you manage your snapshots. They're available on the Discord in the Weakauras and Add-ons channel, or on Wago.io. I'll link them in the description. It's time we move on to the last major feature of Unholy anyway: the Ghoul. Hello again, dear viewer, and welcome to Brill. You've found me during my brief excavation, for I am in search of a worthy corpse to raise as my loyal ghoul. And I think we're in luck, dear viewer, for this grave hosts the perfect subject. Behold, an undead fire mage. Their brain is no more complex than their rotation, the ideal ghoul. Well, in the words of Malfurion,
time waits for no one.
Let's get to raising. Pebble Caller? Well, that's a boring name, but it does serve as a valuable lesson for ghoul names. Ghouls can have all sorts of names, such as Wormbender or Corpse Stealer, but once in a blue moon, you can stumble across a legendary ghoul with the name
Bonegobbler.
Jokes aside, your ghoul is the simplest aspect of Unholy.
Who's touched my ass right now?
You only need to do 3 things. 1. Turn off Gnaw autocast by right-clicking it. 2. Macro your abilities to also have your ghoul use Claw, and make a separate macro for pet attack. This macro even works for Gary and Army. And 3. Feed them mammoth treats. Unlike your Gary and Army, however, ghouls can get buffs like Bloodlust or Paladin Blessings, so make sure to have them up so they can receive those said buffs. Your ghoul has one extra mechanic, Ghoul Frenzy, a talent ability which gives 25% haste and some healing in exchange for an unholy rune. In our rotation, there are only 3 opportunities you can use this in. Firstly, 10 to 8 seconds before a pull. Secondly, with Blood Tap, after using your leftmost blood rune, as was shown in the rotation section. And lastly, during downtime, such as burrow phase on Anubara. Since Ghoul Frenzy heals your ghoul, it risks greatness activating prematurely, and thus ruining your precious opener. However, if you slash sit after casting it, greatness will not activate at all. This is a minor technique only affecting one trinket, but it is bar none my favourite part of Unholy. And with this, I conclude the Ghoul section. So far, we've covered most of everything basic that a new player may have difficulty understanding. So for the last section, I'm going to dedicate it to tools and resources most players should use or at least know about. And then I'll finish this educational experience with a few tips for added measure, starting with the FAQ by the legendary Bouk. It contains, as the name implies, frequently asked questions. I would recommend you go through this to gain a better understanding of being a Death Knight. Available in the description or in the Read This FAQ channel. Next up is Woims, a crucial tool in determining what items are upgrades for you, as well as seeing how your DPS changes based on changes in your rotation or based on length of a fight. I sadly cannot go into further detail and would highly advise you to read the pins in Sim's discussion as a guide to setting it up, as well as installing the Woims exporter add-on, allowing you to quickly import all the relevant data from your character onto the site at an instant. And lastly, the DK analysis tool by Dux, installable as a browser plugin for Chrome, Firefox and Edge. To use this, go into a log and click on a Death Knight's name. Then a DK Analyze tab will be available. Clicking on it will show everything pertaining to the fight. Stats about rotation, snapshots, pets, and even an entire recap on the actions during the boss fight. Personally, I've found this to be the best way to see where you're falling short during fights. As with everything else in this video, it is available in the description. Well, dear viewer, you've come this far. For my first tip, I will warn you about a certain variant of Unholy Death Knight, one which lures the souls of beginners and takes away all their damage. Let me tell you about Evil Face. Hi Lord Darien, what is your opinion on Evil Face?
Harness your hate. Make it useful.
Sure, but that doesn't answer my...
The Knights of the Ebon Blade will not falter.
But...
Dismissed.
Okay, High Lord. Guess I'll go bother someone else. Back to the topic at hand. Evil Face is a Chinese speedrun variant of Unholy Death Knight, utilizing improved Unholy Presence in exchange for no Ebon Plaguebringer. It's called Evil Face because that's how the Unholy icon got translated. Now, let me be very clear about this. Do not play Evil Face. There are a multitude of reasons not to, so please never play this. You can get 99 passes without using this selfish build, as it cuts out all of your utility and even makes your rotation harder. I would never recommend anyone play this. Next tip, pre-potting. To make this quick, don't pre-pot if you don't plan to summon Gary twice. You want as much uptime on that haste potion for your Gary anyway. And for my last tip, trinkets. Trinkets. I had to completely rewrite this now that ICC is only a few days away. I would recommend you all grind dungeons for currency to purchase Comet's Trail and gain the normal Death's Choice. The currency drops per boss kill, so to get both, you'll need to kill a total of 98 bosses in the new Gamma difficulty to afford them. If you have difficulty joining groups due to low gear score, then you should buy some BOE's PvP gear or greatness to give yourself a somewhat better start. Check out the Phase 3 Prebis guide for a more detailed look. And just like that, dear viewer, you've reached the end of this guide. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed watching this and gained at least a better understanding of how to play an Unholy Death Knight. Thank you for watching. Special thanks to the Woims over at Blight Club for their assistance. Couldn't have done it without their help and input. And another special thanks to my guild of furbolgs for allowing me to raid with such fantastic people. I truly love you all. And to my boys in Divine Retribution, I expect you all in Naxxramas this Friday at 1900 EST. I'll be waiting.
I keep having this nagging feeling that I've forgotten something.
Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't all that important.
Yeah, I guess.